Hi, welcome to the Scientist Sage Sangha. I'm Nancy Anderson Dolan from Wise Heart Wellness, and tonight we are going to be talking about rememberment. And you heard that right. I didn't mispronounce it or anything. It is rememberment. We talked last week about dismemberment, and rememberment is literally the idea of getting reattached and coming back together after having been apart. And it really follows from this disintegration or destruction or deconstruction of ourselves that afterwards there is this space to have this rememberment. And that's a term that shamanic practitioners use because it's really about soul remembering. It's deeper than just, oh yeah, I used to like to ride a bike. It's not that kind of rememberment, although it could be part of it. But it really is remembering deeper things. And often when people are working in shamanic fashion, they go through some sort of journey about remembering themselves coming to the earth and choosing to come. And lots of times there are a rememberment moment in that process where they go, oh, right. I was so excited about coming to the earth in a body. And there were so many people supporting me and so many beings. And oh, my purpose was. And so often that's the practice of what happens. And it happens in a whole bunch of different ways. And I talked about a number of them in the email. And for people that don't get the emails or didn't read them, I'm going to go a little bit through it because there isn't anything else online you're going to find about this. Because one of the things I do when I run this Sangha is I pull through all the research and what other people are talking about on a particular topic, as well as gathering my own experience. And there really is not much about rememberment in the fashion that I'm going to talk about it tonight. So it isn't, it might sound a little far-fetched that we can remember those kinds of things, but every single spiritual tradition has this idea that we came here from some sort of spiritual place or presence or something like that. And then we got here and we forgot some of our spiritualness as we come in. And so that's a really common theme. Every single faith tradition has something along that line. And that's why the rememberment is part of what happens when we get sort of cleared up with things. And that when we start that journey back, we may not be conscious of it. Often people that have gotten a divorce or have lost a child or have, lost a job or lost a limb or had accidents or illnesses, there is this big shift where their ideas of themselves and what life would be about are just washed out entirely. And they start again. And literally they pick up the pieces. And that's such a great phrase because it is like picking up pieces, seeing what you're going to take back, what pieces you're going to take back and maybe have a more prominent place in your furnishing your life, and what you're not, what you're just going to pass on, or maybe it's too broken to continue, or maybe you're done with it. You don't need it anymore. And it was part of your life at one time, but isn't anymore. And so there's a rebuilding idea like this, like those pieces, and there's new ideas that we may not have ever remembered before. And there may be new things that we are open to that we've never been open before. And that idea that we are not going to be this sort of broken, repaired person, not like that. It's about being more our authentic self that was underneath all those things. So it isn't like the idea of broken and rebuilt like that. It is broken open and like a phoenix arising, more of that kind of idea. And there's a quote that I put in the email that I want to go back to, and it talks about the heart of most spiritual practices is simply this: remember who you are, remember what you love, remember what is sacred. And I would add sacred to you. Remember what is true, true for you. Remember that you will die and this day is a gift. And remember how you wish to live. And this idea about how I'm going to live, as opposed to what I'm going to achieve. I really didn't have room in the email to go into that, but really want to talk tonight about it a little more, because in our culture, in North American culture specifically, but in other cultures too, we really are about, what are you doing? What are you accomplishing? What do you have? What are you building? All of those kinds of things. And it's not enough to just go along and be a good person on the good planet. And that it really is part of how we fall apart. We are detached from the planet, and we're detached from ourselves, and we're detached from other people, and more involved in things and having experiences and achievements. And so when we sort of come back from that and start to just sort of blossom from our essence, it is, how am I going to be in the world? And that's a real different orientation for a lot of people. And often when I'm working with people and they're moving through and they've had a hard time and they've had a hard interface with the world, we start with things, just real simple things about being kind. And so what am I going to do tomorrow? You're going to be kind. And if you forget what you're going to do tomorrow, give me a call and I'll remind you, you're going to be kind. And the reason that we start with things like that is getting people back in touch with themselves. There's actually some really lovely new research that just came out that shows that people are, when asked to help, nearly 100% of the time they will help. And people want to help. And that kindness is one of the basic human traits. And it's one of the ways that we've survived as a race all this time. We're not in competition all the time. We are in kindness a lot of the time. So reminding people of their possible original traits and how that will feel to live in them, whatever they're doing for a living or in a family, or how they spend their day in a job, it doesn't matter. We can come back to these sort of ground things, ground zero traits for ourselves. And I just want to come back to and say, you don't have to engage in, actual formal shamanic journey to do this. This is something that we do almost every day. We rebuild ourselves in some way every single day. And then we may have things happen to us and, know nothing about shamanic journeying and ceremony, but often spontaneous ceremonies. People just have that when they've had a long illness and overcome it, or when they move to a new home, they have their own little spontaneous ceremonies. And I would really encourage people to do that. In my lifetime, I've changed jobs a good deal, like radical changes, like from working with people with developmental disabilities to becoming a high-end clothing store manager to working in the oil patch and different kinds of things like that. And when I would leave a place, I would do a ceremony. And it might be in a space, actually doing ceremony in a building or something, or it might just be privately me out in nature, just letting go of what I had been involved in and moving on, like tearing up business cards and putting them in a river, but ecological business cards, please. So doing things like that, though. And in relationships, a lot of people will create a bundle of sticks and then break the sticks and put them in the river. So there's all sorts of ceremonies that can be really helpful. Our psyches really like ceremony. That's why there has been ceremony in every culture, everywhere, for all time. There is no culture that has no ceremony. And so we can work with that in this rememberment, because it's one of those baseline things like kindness. We can have ceremony of our own, and we can share it with people if we want, and bring people into that, like people do at weddings or funerals, or we can have them by ourselves. And the power of it isn't diminished one way or the other. And it is really about the intention we take into that. So a big piece of this rememberment idea is about intention. So if I get up every day and I go, I want to remember my authentic self, that's a great intention, that I'm way more likely to move through the day not compromising myself. And that's a good thing. So the idea is, though, beyond that, I was offering some suggestions about it. And one of the main things is about surrender and acceptance. And surrender and acceptance are such a big deal, because when we have losses, often we move into a mindset of this should not be like this. And when we try something and we may succeed in it for a while and then we don't, and we find out it's not for us any longer, we can look back at that as a mistake. But what if it's not? A client of mine gave me a beautiful saying today: divine will is moving through my life right now. I'm like, oh, what a great saying. I'm going to borrow that and repeat it like a mantra. But the idea really is about, what if life is just flowing? And when people look at my resume, a lot of different things on it, radically different, it's not that I am not interested in things. I'm interested in many things. And I believe all of these things that I've been through, different jobs and different things like that, have made me really good at what I'm doing right now. And I needed each of those things to build me to this step. And so this idea of nothing being wrong, just surrendering to the next part of our journey and accepting where we are at on it. I want to be somewhere else than my journey in some areas of my life right now. And every time I try and push that, it doesn't work well. And so when we want to be, more settled, or in a relationship or out of a relationship, or in what we believe is our dream job, or, all sorts of things like that, it can pull us out of those base things like being kind, being peaceful, the priorities that we set that maybe are not coming from that deep, authentic part of ourselves, but trying to just feel better. Because life is really normal with its highs and lows. It's like a wave on the water. And if we were high all the time, it would be very different. It would be drugs generally, or other things that people use. But this idea of being able to surrender to the flow, where you'll have these higher times and then lower times, and the opportunity to be accepting and surrendering and peaceful in all of them. Now, we're not peaceful all the time. It is either the peaceful part or moving into peaceful that we can work with. But if we fight everything, then we never move into that flow, and we're never feeling really authentic. We're always feeling like something is wrong or something is lacking. And so moving into those things makes the adjustments where maybe we've gotten off course easier, but we feel like fighting would make it better. And be very clear, there are times when we need to fight for what's important and stand our ground. But there's a different feeling with it when we're feeling connected authentically and doing that. And that is the path to the next place. That is the flow. When we are fighting a whole bunch of things on different things and feeling that this doesn't work and that's not okay and this is not okay, often that is flailing. We're not fighting the good fight at that point. We're not in the flow. We're just flailing around because we're not in surrender and acceptance. So that can be a huge part of the deal. I spent more time on that because that's the first piece, and it really can help. Now, the idea, if I have that intention, even before I get to full surrender acceptance, if I do rounds of contemplation and meditation, and this is where I was talking with someone today about, what if you just asked about that question? You have a question here in your life about how things are and how to be in that. And what if you just asked for 7 days and then just contemplated, meditated, and saw it, you feel the answer is. Because the repeated rounds are the important part. To calm down our bodies, we get more awareness, and we need to be home in these bodies, not a different body, not waiting to be a different body, but home here in these bodies to get the messages clearly about what's next for us. And so that practice of being in the body, contemplating, meditating, and asking a pointed question about what's next, or what's really me, what would be authentic for me, any kinds of questions like that you ask repeatedly, it is really useful. I was graced to be with a group of people where we sat face to face, and this was like 6 hours a day in retreat, and asking each other, who are you? And it would bring up deeper and deeper answers as you hung with it. And it's not something I would run out and do every weekend, but it is a great thing to practice. And you can practice this in journaling, even just writing, like, who am I really? What do I really want? What do I cherish? And exploring those sorts of things. And it's not that something's wrong. It's just developing this deeper presence with yourself. So that's a really useful thing to do that. And it's not us saying, I am going to do things differently from now on. It isn't. It's this alignment process. And it may come to, there's something in my experience. I was extremely addicted to Diet Coke. And like, I had it in big cylinder tanks on a spout in my basement. I was very addicted to it. Whenever I would land in a city, I would drive somewhere I could get some. And I put that into that process because I knew it wasn't healthy for me, and I didn't like being addicted to it in that way. And literally one day I just dropped it. There wasn't oh, this is how you go about it, or it's so bad for you, nothing like that. It just disappeared, just from inquiring about it. So inquiry is a powerful part of the deal. And I've talked about that in the email as well, that the inquiry is like this age-old practice. It's not a new thing. It really, when people would go on vision quests, or monks would go into caves for years, that was the process of inquiry. And we can do that. We do not have to go into a cave somewhere for years. We can just do it on a daily basis, writing things down, or talking with someone else that we want to have an inquiry partner with, and find out those places in our lives that don't feel quite right, where we might be guided to them. And the other big thing that for most people is when they connect with Mother Earth. We have been separated from the earth so much, we forget we are part of the body of the earth. So if we are getting into our bodies, the bigger body is the earth. And the grounding of it, I, for the very first time in just about a year, got to stand barefooted on my dirt in my yard. And it was amazing. It felt so grounding. And it's like, oh, right, this is who I am. And not, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I'm going to write, or this is what I'm going to talk about. It's just like, oh, yes, here I am. Here you are. I'm back. I'm home. And those kinds of experiences can be a big part of rememberment. And that often solidifies really how we want to be in the world. And going back to those things can help us remember, right, I am this grounded person. I live in this spacious world that provides for all of my basic needs. And it doesn't say that I get to have this job, that car, that partner. It just like, oh, you're here. And I will nurture you and keep you alive here. And so it's a good thing to try out. The nature part of it is the last one I really want to talk about, because it is the one that probably we can forget in the rememberment, because it's there all the time. But really deeply connecting to nature is really a big part of being ourselves, being a person on this planet. And you can do it in many different ways. While I've been laid up for the last 6 months with broken legs, I have done a lot more visualization and looking out windows and those sorts of things, because I haven't been able to get out there. But I know I need that nurturance to be stable and reasonable and heal and move along into the next phase of life. So that's where I want to wrap it up here. I hope that's given you some ideas from things like making up your own ceremonies and taking time when you have come into something like a roadblock or a loss or what you perceive as a failure at that moment, to be able to sort of reach out and create your own rememberment time where you just pull in what you really are and what life is really bringing for you at this moment. So what we're going to do to close as usual, we're going to first settle down, take a breath, put your feet up if you do that, and just do a little contemplation, meditation here for a few moments. And this one, I'm going to take you right back to remembering the light of who you are, the spark of it. So just take a deep breath. And please, as always, take part as much as you want to and let go the rest of it. But just as you relax into this body, taking that deep breath and just letting it remind you that you are fully in a full body. And if you're here listening to this or watching it tonight, then you have been given a number of things. You have the ability to see and hear and be with us and reach out through this technology. But just imagine as you move down past the level of your cells and your skin, relaxing through your body, feeling for that spark inside you that animates you, and particularly you. No one else on this planet or in this universe has this spark. You are your own luminous being. The particular collection of energy and cells that inhabits this space right now, at this time, with your unique perspective and presence, it is such a miracle that all the stardust came together to make you. And you're not a cat or a bird, you're a human this time. Having a uniquely human experience. Being able to be aware of both that spark and this corporeal body. And imagine for a moment what it would be like to live with no regrets. His presence. And imagine that the things that are uniquely suited for you, the way that you are in the world, the way that you came here to be, will flow towards you. And you can turn towards them. You can open up to them. To a deep knowing, and moving through the world in a way that is fully open to the whole experience. Feeling all the ups and downs, the grief, the sadness, the joy, the happiness, and just the common day-to-day moments that we really can take joy in with deep presence and deep appreciation. And feeling new purpose every day. And if you're not sure what your purpose is, I always suggest being kind. It's a great thing to practice while you wait to know more. Thank you so much for jumping in and enjoying this. As always, please send any comments, questions, suggestions to scientistsage@gmail.com. We love your feedback and so grateful for your presence. I am with you. You are with me. Blessed be.